All right, today we're going to tackle one of the most important concepts in Node.js, middleware. But don't worry, we're not just going to stare at a bunch of code. Instead, we're going to use a simple story, a little analogy that I promise will make this whole thing click and stick with you for good. So let's dive right in.
So, to really get a handle on middleware, let's just forget about servers and code for a second. I want you to imagine something else. What if your web server worked just like a big, busy international airport? Believe me, this one idea is the key. It's going to unlock everything.
So here are the main players in our little story. The airport itself, that's your server. Every single person trying to catch a flight, well, that's an incoming request from a user. And their final goal, the boarding gate for their specific flight, that's the piece of code they're trying to get to, the route handler. Makes sense, right?
Okay, but here's the thing. We all know you can't just waltz into an airport and stroll straight to your gate. No way. You have to go through security first. You have to pass a whole series of checks. And this, right here, is where our story really begins.
Just think about that journey you take every time you fly. First, there's the ID check, making sure you're supposed to be there. That's authentication. Then, your bags go through the scanner, validating the contents. Then, you have all those rules about what you can and can't bring, blocking bad stuff. Maybe an agent stamps your boarding pass, adding a little piece of info. It's only after you've passed all of these checks that you finally get to your gate. And guess what? Each one of those checkpoints, that's a middleware.
So let's get official for a second. These security checkpoints are exactly what we call middleware in Node.js. They're just functions that sit right in between that initial request and the final destination. And they have a ton of power. They can look at the request, they can change things, or they can stop the whole trip dead in its tracks.
Now let's peek at the code just for a moment. Every single one of these security checkpoint functions, these middleware, they all have access to the same three things: rec, res, and next. You could think of this as the standard issue toolkit for every security officer in the entire airport. And this is where it all comes together so beautifully. That rec object, that's literally the passenger. It's got their ID, their details, their luggage, everything. The res object, well, that's the officer's power to make a final decision, to approve or deny entry. And that little function, nexting, that's the magic word. It's the officer giving you a nod and saying, all right, you're cleared. Go on to the next checkpoint. This brings us to probably the most important power that a security officer or a middleware really has. What happens if a passenger fails one of these checks? What if they're not supposed to be there at all? So, picture this. A passenger walks up to that very first ID check, but oops, they forgot their passport. They have no way to prove who they are. They just don't have the right credentials. What does that officer do? Well, the officer doesn't just let them wander off to find their gate, of course not. They stop them right there and send them away. In code, that's our middleware sending a response directly back to the user, saying something like 401 access denied. Now look closely at this code. What's missing? The officer never says, proceed to the next checkpoint. There's no call to next. And that right there, that is the absolute core power of middleware. By simply choosing not to call next, the journey is over. It's done. The passenger gets turned away right on the spot. They don't see the next checkpoint, they don't see the duty-free shop, and they definitely don't get to their boarding gate. This ability to just halt the entire process is absolutely critical for building safe and secure applications. It's how we handle authentication, making sure only logged-in users get through. It's how we do authorization, rate limiting to stop spam, and how we block any sketchy-looking requests from ever getting near our important code. But this whole idea builds on itself, because just like in a real airport, not all security checkpoints are the same, are they? You've got different levels of security for different situations. First up, you've got that main security screening at the entrance. These are the big airport-wide rules. Every single passenger, I don't care what flight you're on, has to go through this. In our world, this is called application-level middleware. A perfect example is express.json, which is like a baggage scanner that checks every single passenger's luggage to see if it contains JSON. But then, sometimes you need extra security just for one specific gate. Think about getting into a VIP lounge or maybe a flight going somewhere that needs extra screening. That's route-level middleware. It only runs for passengers who are trying to get to that one specific destination.
So what happens if something goes wrong? A passenger feels unwell, or maybe one of the scanners breaks down. The airport doesn't just shut down. It has a special emergency team on standby. That's your error handling middleware. It's a special type of function that just waits around.
and it only springs into action when an unexpected error happens anywhere in the airport.
And finally, let's talk equipment. Every airport comes with its own standard gear, right? The basic metal detectors and baggage scanners. These are like the built-in middleware that come with a framework like Express. But sometimes you need more firepower, so you hire specialized third-party security firms for things like advanced bomb detection or detailed video logging. Those are third-party middleware packages like Helmet, CORS, or Morgan that you can just plug right in.
Okay, so we've taken a whole tour of this airport. Let's bring it all home. Why is this whole system, this middleware pattern, so unbelievably powerful for us as developers? What are the real superpowers here?
The real takeaway is that middleware gives you this incredibly clean, organized, and reusable way to handle everything that happens to a request. You can add info to it as it passes through, you can stop it cold if it's not authorized, you can use the same security check for dozens of different routes, log everything, handle errors, all without making a giant mess of your final destination logic. It just keeps your code so much cleaner.
So the next time you're in an interview and someone asks you, "What is middleware?" You've got this. You don't just have a technical definition, you have a story. You can just think of the airport, the passenger, and that whole series of security checks. And this one sentence, it perfectly captures that entire journey. It's a story you are not going to forget.